For as long as I can remember, I've been driving down this road and seeing this fence covered in dead foxes. Every year, as part of the preparation for lambing season and during lambing season, the farmer that looks after that land, he goes out and he is shooting foxes as quickly as he can because he doesn't want the foxes eating his lambs. And every year there's a little bit of community outrage, but it hasn't been the people who go to this church or the guy that lives in this house that have been doing the complaining. And especially in recent years, with more and more people moving from the city, the complaints have got a little bit more vocal, shall we say. Now, the farmer's been doing this since I was a kid, so I would imagine it's now his kids that are doing it. But it's primarily a means of controlling the foxes so they don't attack his lambs. But the reason for hanging it on the fence on the highway is as a visual statement of, look at the problem that we're trying to deal with here. Now, people who are used to life in the city don't like that in-your-face impact of, oh my God, look at all those dead foxes. And whether they don't like it because they just don't like seeing dead animals, or they don't like it because they're animal rights activists or whatever, doesn't matter. It's a visual statement of the damage foxes cause to our agricultural industry, but it's also an incredible visual statement on just how many bloody foxes there are. And they're not just eating lambs. In fact, they only eat lambs at one point in the year. The rest of the time, they're eating our wildlife. And if it wasn't for farmers going out of their way to kill off the foxes when the foxes are attacking their lambs, there'd be a lot more foxes around attacking the wildlife. Because 9 months of the year, foxes cause zero problems for farmers. It's only during lambing season that foxes are a problem for farmers. The rest of the year, 9 months of the year, 3/4 of the year, those foxes are eating wildlife. As much as a lot of tree changers, tree huggers, clueless people attack this farmer for hanging the foxes on the main road like this, it's a good thing, because it's a good thing that he shoots them, and it's a good thing that people are more aware of it. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye-bye. Yeah. And that disconnect between town and country as we become a more urbanized society is going to cause us more problems. Because if it's more difficult for the farmers to grow the food and fibre that we need, we're going to have to pay for that at some point. And it's also concerning, this push against shooting foxes, because there's a growing tendency amongst land managers. And when I say land managers, I'm particularly talking about government land managers, to a lesser extent corporate land managers, that when you have a problem with an invasive species, you just need to dump huge amounts of poison on it. Now, I'm not a big fan of poisons, but I do acknowledge that they may have a place to play in a multi-pronged strategy. But as more evidence comes to light about the risks of some of these poisons, you have to really consider whether the benefits of having a poison as part of your strategy is a good idea or not. And we've seen that recently with a number of poisons that we used to think were safe. Now not so much. And when it comes to foxes, one of those is 1080. Now, the science on this is preliminary, and a fair bit of it is coming out of New Zealand, where 1080 is used with considerable abandon, that 1080 and products of its decomposition are beginning to appear in humans, and that is beginning to have some health effects. Like I said, the science is preliminary. But in Australia, the use of 1080 has often rested on the dogma that the native Australian animals are immune to the poison, because 1080 is derived from a particular native Australian pea. However, that pea is native to Western Australia, and how the rest of Australia would ever have been exposed to it and therefore have some sort of immunity, let's just say was never questioned with particular rigour. And that's particularly of a concern to me at the moment, because a friend of mine, fellow YouTuber, recently lost his dog to an illegally placed 1080 bait. And so at the bare minimum, we don't want to be putting any extra pressure on farmers to not shoot foxes. But also we want to have another look at the regulations involving the use of 1080, or possibly it's not so much the regulations that are the problem, it's the enforcement of the existing regulations. Because there's no way Grizzly, you know, Chris's dog, could have picked up the bait where he was if that bait had been placed legally. And so while that's a direct personal, emotional connection to this issue, and because it's harrowing seeing someone you care about, you know, go through the trauma of losing a dearly loved pet, there is also a growing concern amongst, you know, the environmental and the health effects of poisons like this. So yeah, it's a good thing to see these foxes shot rather than, you know, rotting away in the field because they died from some poison. So yeah, on that sad note, I will bid you adieu and see you in the next video.